One thing that was really pretty dramatic about this whole week period was we had more ET voices than, we've had ET voices over the years occasionally, but we had it happen a few times this week, which was rather striking. This one particular night, it happened to be Tuesday night, we walked down the path to the east, as we often do, and I was just reviewing my recording about that to refresh my memory on everything that happened. And while we were down quite a ways down the path, maybe a quarter of a mile or so, there were a couple members of our team that had gone on ahead, but we didn't know it. And we were looking further towards the east, Dr. Greer, myself, and several other people, and saw what looked to be a laser light pointing up from the ground and kind of slightly, slanted towards the northeast.
Right. It was more white, however, than the green ones we have, and it was definitely. And we asked everyone, did anyone have a laser? And no one did.
Right. They didn't have one.
We knew that it was some kind of an energy beam coming from the ETs that were there, doing some kind of signaling to some of their colleagues out in deep space, because it was pointed upward into space from the Earth. It wasn't coming down from space to the Earth. It was coming from the ground upward, but it was only, maybe 15 to 20 feet in front of us.
Right, and the people that were down there, not only did they not have lasers, but they were out of sight of us as well at that point.
And so, and now this begins a sequence of things that is, I think, the most important event in the last, I don't know how many decades of this issue. And I say that advisedly, having been involved in much of this as the head of CSETI and the Disclosure Project.org. But this particular sequence of events that happened was astonishing, because after that happened, and I could see out in the field, out in the desert where we were, and it was, I guess, around 10:45, 11 o'clock that night. We had taken a break because we'd already been out there since about 8. And we were walking out there when there was a group of people, several of us there, and we saw this whitish beam of laser-like light that came straight up from the ground going into space. And then I began to see various orbs and energy fields, almost like a heat in the desert effect, and swirling vortices and what have you. And I knew there were a number of ET beings that were transdimensionally out in that area, right, and that were observing the group. And this at the same time that we had some pretty spectacular overflights of objects in the sky above us that we had filmed with our night scope. So as I was doing that, we were making contact in consciousness, and I was inviting them to come with me back to where the circle was, which was near the parking area of this particular their site that we use. And as I turned to do that, there was this enormous, brilliant, like a fountain of green light that emerged from the desert and then became a pink and maroon and gold, and it was so bright it lit up the whole northern part of Joshua Tree National Park.
A huge expanse.
I mean, we have the tail end of this on film. It was right, astonishing, and it appeared to be very close to us and very much near us in the park.
Right.
And this, I think everybody saw, because it was just an amazing color and amazing.
Even the people that had their backs to it saw the illumination from it. It was
the illumination from it.
And big.
So as we were seeing that, right after that, and after I had invited these ETs that were stationed to the east of our circle out in this field, this landing field, that's this big, huge plane that we've seen these craft come in and out of, and where we had just seen the laser light, the laser had been pointing right in the direction of where this enormous, brilliant object illuminated the desert.
Right.
And I don't think that's a coincidence. And then I saw this object that looked like the size of maybe a little bigger than a silver dollar, a little bigger than that. That was a soft white object that was floating beside us it would be to our right as we were walking back to the circle, which was right to the north of us. And I said, oh my God, this thing is right here. And so, and then it appeared and floated, moving with us, and then dematerialized. And so we came back up to rejoin everyone who was still up by our chairs in the circle. And we were there. Of course, everybody was very excited about this large craft, this sighting that we had seen. And as we were all gathered sort of on the north and east side of where our circle was in a group, we suddenly heard, for several seconds, a group that sounded like 3 or 4 ET voices talking in the direction of the path where I had seen this orb.
Right.
And a lot of the people there heard this, and there were no. I mean, we have almost a 4th generation night scope that I just gotten. That's wonderful, and I could see there was no people, there were no humans or anyone on our group in this area where we had heard this. So this is another thing that was sort of a voice event. And I went, oh my God, they're right here with us. They have joined us. And many, many, many people heard this. So I said, we really need to sit in meditation again and see how much further contact can happen. So people were sort of getting themselves organized. And at this point, Linda and Raven sit down on the chairs that are on the west side of the circle facing east, where the voices were, where the landing was, and where I'd seen this orb. And Linda, you may want to just tell the background of what you and our team member Raven were doing.
Yeah, not everyone had taken their seats yet, but we sat down, and it was pitch dark. There wasn't a moon this week. We chose this week because it was so dark. And Raven started taking pictures in the darkness with her camera. I could hear the clicking. And she was sitting next to me, so she was taking pictures. Our backs were to the west, so she was taking pictures towards the east, slightly southeast. And it was pitch dark, as I said, and she was not using a flash, and there were no lights visible at all. Period.
Right.
Zilch. I mean, it was dark. And then it was a couple of days later that she downloaded her pictures and discovered what I'll let Dr. Greer describe it. It was amazing.
Well, I have to say, one of the things that's sort of the backstory of this is that Raven has asked the ETs to sort of connect with her awareness and her camera so that when she would take pictures, they would be there. And they were. And it started actually at the Outer Banks a few months ago when we were there in May of 2009. And she just felt to take the picture. She took a picture, and it's on our website. If you go to cseti.org, cseti.org, and you can see this, and it's a disc at about a 45-degree angle out over the ocean, just right off from where our beach house was. And we're going to do one of these expeditions to the Outer Banks of North Carolina out in the ocean again this spring. And we're also, by the way, going to be doing this for a week at Boca Grande Island off the coast of Florida near Fort Myers, but it's an island that juts out into the Gulf of Mexico that's beautiful. And we're going to do this in February. I think Linda has
February 7th through 12th.
Yeah, the 7th through the 12th of February. And you can see this at cseti.org. And that's open to you folks who want to come and spend a week out there. It's a nice time of year to get into some warmer weather.
But also only 40 people, so...
Yeah, it's only limited to 40 people because we're meeting in an oceanfront house that can only hold that many. So, but if you want to join us, we're going to make contact there and train people to do the meditation and remote viewing, and God only knows what will happen given what's been happening recently. So anyway, getting back to this story, we were, of course, it took a while for her to go through all her pictures. A day or two later, she says, oh, my God. She looks at this thing, and you cannot believe it. In a picture, now this is pitch black, and the people aren't in their chairs. There's an orb, and this picture is going to be released. We've got to get the hall. We're doing all the measurements of the site and everything. This picture, in my opinion, is the most important picture in the history of the ET and UFO subject, bar none. More anything, I've never seen anything this important. And what it is there is a orb exactly like the one I saw that came up with me from the landing area. And there's sort of a cone of light dispersing from it that illuminates these empty chairs. And you can see a bush on the left and then like 3 or 4 empty chairs. And above where the third chair would be is this extraterrestrial being that's there crystal clear. And when she looked at it and she zoomed in on it and took out some of the kind of noise, because she only has a 6-megapixel camera, and adjusted the contrast so she could see what this being looks like, it is an absolute extraterrestrial being that is hovering in this cone of light about just right above the level of the chairs, which were about 39 inches high, outside the circle, and it's looking straight at her and the camera. And she had taken the picture with an ISO of 400. It's a digital camera, and had the shutter open for 3 or 4 seconds. So nothing is blurred, and she didn't have it on tripod. So this had to blip in very quickly in order for it to appear on this camera. And when you look at this person, what it is that he's facing, his chest is turned and his head facing where she is, but his legs, you could tell he was moving towards the light or emerging, and his head is very large. You can see all the features. He has flesh-colored skin, completely looks like he could be a human, a Caucasian human, very flesh-colored skin. He has sort of goggles on that are like a night vision system, but more look like glasses, but I know that's what they are. They're trans-dimensional imaging system. He has, you can see his left leg, right leg, his chest, his head. He has a very large cranium, and he has a sort of a concave area, sort of an indented area in his forehead with 2 ridges. So he's definitely not a human. And from his eyes to the top of his head would be the size of most humans' heads. So he has a very large cranium. When I saw that, I went, "Oh my God, this man must have an IQ of 400 or 500." And then you could see actually his the nose, his lips, the chin, and you can see both shoulders. His left hand sort of in the air, and his right one at his waist. And one leg is extended, and the right one is sort of in midair bent because he was actually kind of in motion. And this is levitating above the group, outside the circle, but very close to the circle. Now, this photograph of an extraterrestrial trans-dimensionally being held there by one of these probes, one of these light probes, is, in my opinion, the most astonishing photograph I've ever seen. I mean, we were literally, when we saw this the first time, I was up till 4:30 in the morning looking at it going, good God, this is astonishing. So this is what we did. We went back to the site and measured, the whole area. And I have to say that where this being appeared is the only unambiguous area he could have appeared in. And what I mean by that is that there's a sign on the left, there's a bush, and then further around to the right from where he was is a Joshua tree. But where he's floating is clear desert air. There's no mistake about what this is, and we actually did all those measurements. And the light is very directional because you can see the creases in the blankets that people had on their chairs. Well, it was cold. It was down in the low 30s at times out there with wind, and it was chilly. And so, but you can see the chairs, and you can see everything crisp and crystal clear, which meant that this had to be very quick for it to be that crisp and clear. And this E.T. is literally floating there and has his head turned looking exactly right into the camera. I have to tell you people that this is exactly what I've been describing for years. Now, with the naked eye, no one saw anything. And this is what's really important, is that with the naked eye, this was transdimensional. The digital camera got this, but it picked it up probably in a very short instant, and she had connected with them asking that they allow themselves to be imaged and photographed. And, while there are lots of pictures of UFOs and ET craft, to have a picture of a being that's floating over a CE-5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, diplomatic contact group is historic, to say the least, and astonishing. And this is going to go... I'm going to send a copy of this straight to the White House. But this is one of these things that when the implications of this are enormous, because what it means is that the time for more and more open contact is rapidly approaching, because this is a whole group of people. And, of course, everyone saw this enormous light. Many people had seen the orbs. Everyone had seen a number of craft that had flown over. We had, on that first night we were out, by the way, we had it looked like a mothership that flew into the park.
Right.
That was it was enormous, at arm's length, a couple inches, and it moved in from the north and below the level of the mountains, and it literally materialized and then elongated and then dematerialized and then reappeared as two craft. And this,
to me, it was reminiscent of the Phoenix Lights.
Yes, it did look like the Phoenix Lights.
It was amber-colored, and it was several lights kind of in a row like that. But
yes, it was much closer. And we knew, and this was the very first night we were out, by the way, the very first night. And so we knew that there was going to be a major and ongoing contact this week. But for this photograph, and when I looked at the photograph that happened this night of the event we're describing, I thought, well, this number of people had gotten that some of these craft that we were seeing were from the galaxy Andromeda. Now, for people who don't understand the astrophysics and astronomy very well, the Milky Way galaxy is the galaxy that our sun and our planet, Earth, is in. And that has about 100 billion stars in it. And that's called the Milky Way galaxy. And it's a spiral galaxy, and you've all seen pictures of it. Andromeda galaxy is 2.5 million light years away, and it's sort of a twin galaxy to our galaxy. It's a very similar size and shape as a spiral galaxy, and you can see it this time of year if you look up in the sky with good binoculars or a good night scope. And we had started having this sort of sense that we were having some of these civilizations were from way outside of our many people say it's a galactic event happening. I said, no, it's not. It's intergalactic. It's cosmic. It's universal. And I've said this since 1990. Well, we've been getting the sense that this was from Andromeda. So we had at Rio Rico in Arizona, when we had this gathering with over 200 people out in the desert south of Tucson last month or in October, we had an object that I had remote viewed that was going to be a sort of a complex tetrahedral-shaped object that would appear right over us. Raven took a picture up in that part of the sky, again, just feeling it, and this object is there. Well, we had this similar object come into Joshua Tree the very first night, and I got the sense that what we were seeing was also one of these craft, not all of them, was from the Andromeda system. This galaxy is 2.5 million light years away. So we got the sense that perhaps this person, this being, that was there was from Andromeda. Now, we can't prove this, except one of the things that maybe is an indication is that after we looked at this picture and began to analyze it, and looked at this particular being, who I'm estimating to be 4 to 5 feet tall. It's very hard to tell because he's outside the group a little bit, but we know the height of the chairs. We have all the measurements, and he wasn't way far out because he would have been out of the area of light. But I'm estimating him to be about that height, and it's definitely a male. And he... interestingly, the following night, once we discovered this, Raven was sitting next to someone with a very good magnetometer and was asking, and mentally, this being that she photographed, are you from Andromeda? And suddenly, she and this other guy felt someone touch their hands, and the area around them went from 30-some degrees to 69 degrees temperature, warmth. Like there was an energy field, and his magnetometer started pinging right off the scale, bouncing off the wall of the meter. And when she asked it again, the magnetometer did the same thing, as to answer yes. And now I know this sounds really kind of way out there for folks, but hey, if it wasn't way out there, it wouldn't be interstellar. It would be man-made. And this is exactly what's happening. It's really, really exciting.